Do you want to be the most hated player in your Oathbreaker group? Do you thrive on the suffering of the other players? Then Liliana Vess and I have a deck for you. Shout out to all the patrons that saw this video early. If you didn't join the Patreon, you're late. This video has been out for a week. How do you get my videos early? Just go to patreon.com/vmcampos and pledge at the astounding price of $3.33. What a deal. You'll get all the content ahead of everyone. And you'll also help out the channel and your good buddy VM Campos. I hope you pledge, but if not, let's check out the public version of the video. Hey everyone, it's VM Campos, Magic fan, Oathbreaker fan. Welcome to another Oathbreaker deck tech. This time we're featuring Liliana, the Last Hope, as the commander in our deck. Now be warned, this deck is only for people that want to be hated, because the strategies found in this deck are quite vicious. Let's check it out. Alright, as I said, first of all, we've got Liliana, the Last Hope, a 3-mana planeswalker, so very efficient at 3 mana. You'll get her out very quickly. You'll either weaken a creature, mill yourself, but get a creature back, and we're going for the ultimate, which is a -7. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, create X, 2/2 zombies, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you already control. So at the very least, you're going to create 2 zombies at the beginning, then 2 plus 2, then 2 plus 4, then 2 plus 8, and so forth, and math is hard, but you're going to get lots of zombies with this ultimate. And that's the name of the game in this Oathbreaker deck, zombies, and vexing your opponent, as we will see. Alright, the signature spell, Dread Summons. This is a classic zombie-focused card. It's black plus X. It's a sorcery. Each player mills X cards for each creature card put into a graveyard. This way, you create a tapped 2/2 black zombie. So depending on how much mana you have later on in the game, you could dump in, 5, 6, 10 mana into this, and possibly make lots and lots of zombies to overwhelm your opponent. Beautiful. And even with a low amount of mana, let's say 2, you could still pull off a few zombies, and then recast it again because it's your signature spell. Now when I build Oathbreaker decks, I have 6 categories of types of cards, and we'll go through each one. The first type over here is the mana ramp. So more mana means more spells, which is more good, bad grammar aside. So Soul Ring is banned, thankfully, in Oathbreaker, so the next best thing, Arcane Signet. 2 mana, make a mana of any color. Charcoal Diamond, 2 mana, make black mana. Comes in tap, but that's okay. It's on curve, and then it gets you ahead of the opponents. Coldsteel Heart is similar. It comes in tapped. You choose a color that you want, obviously black, or I guess you can choose white for the lulz, that'll be fine. Fellwar Stone is a classic card. I used to play with this card back in the 90s. It's been reprinted all the time, so it's a 2-mana mana rock that gives you a mana of any color of the lands your opponents could produce. So if your opponents can produce blue mana, you get a mana rock that produces blue mana. If they produce black mana, you get black mana. If they have a command tower, you get all the colors. And you can cackle every time you read the flavor text. What do you have that I cannot obtain? Spake Marcel, the Pretender. And lastly, this is a really under-the-radar mana rock that has been recently reprinted, but it was just out of print for so very long, meaning it was expensive, so now with more reprints it's less expensive. Fractured Powerstone. 2 mana, tap it to add 1 colorless mana. So mana ramp is mana ramp, and low cost efficient. Mana ramp is good. Tap it to roll the planar die, which doesn't do anything in Oathbreaker, but it's just fun to flex with that. On your end step, I will roll the planar die, I guess. Next category is creatures, and I've got a bunch of incredibly mana-efficient zombies in this deck. Shambling Ghast, 1 mana, 1/1 zombie. When it dies, either weaken a creature or make a treasure. You probably want that treasure. Dreadmalkin, 1 mana, 1/1 menace, zombie cat that can get stronger as it eats other creatures. Foulmire Knight, from the amazingly overpowered Throne of Eldraine. Either create a 1/1 Death Touch zombie knight, or play the adventure, Profane Insight for 3 mana, draw a card, lose a life. And then later play the Foulmire Knight as well. It's 2 cards for the price of 1. Diregraf Ghoul, it's just a good old 2/2 for 1 mana, comes in tapped. Then we got Cryptbreaker. This one's amazing. 1 black mana for a 1/1 zombie, but then you pay 2 mana, tap it, discard a card, create a 2/2 zombie. So zombies making zombies. And then tap 3, untap zombies you control, draw a card, lose a life. So you're going to have lots of zombies in this deck, and you're going to have lots of cards. And with lots of zombies, of course we need the Champion of the Perished. Who's old enough to remember Champion of the Parish? Ah, poor guy, the champion perished. Anyway, 1 black mana for a 1/1. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1 on this. Well, you're going to be entering zombies pretty easily with low cost, or creating zombies in many different ways. This will be getting bigger and bigger. Another category of cards that I put into the deck are various permanents. How about an Underworld Dreams, 3 mana to damage your opponent every time they simply draw a card. If you put this out on turn 3, everyone is going to be on a clock that is going to slowly kill them from simply drawing cards. Never will an opponent's heart break harder than when they draw cards. And for those pesky players that love to draw multiple cards, there's multiple damage closer to death. Why not get the Liliana party going with another Liliana, Waker of the Dead, a 4 mana, 4 loyalty planeswalker, +1. Each player discards a card, each opponent who cannot loses 3 life. So this is a win condition, because it's going to do damage 3 points at a time, and in Oathbreaker where people have less life, 3 damage is a lot. Now you are discarding your own cards as well, but again, this deck, as I said at the beginning, you will be the villain, but that's okay, glory at any price. -3. Target creature gets -X, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. So you'll probably kill a creature with stuff in your graveyard and get rid of those pesky, indestructible creatures like Toski. And what we're trying to get is the -7. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put target creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. So yeah, you're gonna make yourself discard, well, discard your own creature, it'll come back, and everyone's discarding cards, and even if they didn't discard a card, any creature that ends up being in the graveyard is now ripe for that emblem. And I love Liliana's stylish outfit here. How about we add the best Liliana ever as well? Yep, it's 6 whole mana, but you get a 6 loyalty planeswalker, and you get a static ability. Whenever your creature dies, draw a card, including your tokens. This comes from the good old War of the Spark, another overpowered set from back in the day. +1, create some zombies. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures, so it's a mini board wipe. And -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. So have fun with your 1 land, your 1 creature, your 1 artifact, and everything else is gone. Vicious. Here's another vicious card, the Eldest Reborn. 5 mana, Saga, Chapter 1. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Chapter 2, each opponent discards a card. And Chapter 3, put any creature or planeswalker from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So once again, this deck is all about effects that just wreck the whole table, makes everyone's blood boil, but you will feast on that anger and their cards. Ooh yeah, Bolas' Citadel, one of my favorite cards of all time in the world of Magic, second only to Hymn to Torok. This is a 6 mana legendary artifact that lets you cast cards and play cards off the top of the library. Your instants are always available, and better yet, you just pay life instead of mana. And if you really need to win the game, once you've got 10 non-land permanents on the battlefield, including Bolas' Citadel, including Liliana herself, deal 10 damage to all opponents. This is a game winner. The next group of spells is all about removal. So we're going to have some creature removal, planeswalker removal. Good old Doomblade, destroy any creature as long as it's not black. Get the Strixhaven art, which is the most beautiful. Heartless Act. This one's interesting. Either destroy any creature with no counters or remove counters from a creature. Usually you'll be doing mode 1, no problem. Or how about no stipulations? 2 mana, destroy any creature and just lose a little life. No problem at all. Okay, if we need to deal with planeswalkers, and all our opponents are going to have planeswalkers, how about the very efficient 3 mana Hero's Downfall, destroy a creature or planeswalker instantly. I'm glad this was recently reprinted. Or how about for 1 mana, destroy that planeswalker or creature. Now it does have the stipulation as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature, or discard a card. Great, I will discard my land and destroy your planeswalker. Got it. And lastly, if you really need to quell a board state that's getting out of hand, 3 mana, Bontu's Last Reckoning, destroy all creatures. Now be careful, lands you control do not untap during your next untap step. So hopefully you've got those mana rocks out, so that you still have mana to play with next turn, or else this might tap you out and put you out of commission for a whole turn. So just spend 3 mana with mana rocks, Don't tap any of your mana until your next turn. Again, don't tap your mana during their turn. They'll get locked down with the Reckoning. You've got to play your cards right with this very powerful 3-mana board wipe. Moving on to card draw. If we have more cards, we have more answers. We have more win conditions. We have more of a chance of getting to the end game. So, Night's Whisper, 2 mana, you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Life is a resource, don't be afraid to use it because those 2 cards you just drew could help you win the game. Sign in Blood, same thing, double black mana. Now this one's interesting. This is a target player, draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. This could be the out-of-nowhere, game-winning card that does the final 2 bits of damage to the opponent. Maybe weaken them down somehow to those final 1 or 2 points of life and say, hey, would you like some cards? Here you go. That'll be 2 life. Game over. Do you want lots of cards and you've got lots of mana and lots of life? Skeletal Scrying, single black plus X as an additional cost to cast this. Exile X cards from your graveyard, and then you draw X cards and lose X life. So that's a good equivalent exchange. Blood Pact, 3 mana, target player draws 2 cards, loses 2 life. Same thing, this might be the final 2 bits of damage that you need to end the opponent, or for yourself, draw some cards, lose some life instantly. So keep up that mana and pull this off on the opponent's end step. This card's from Midnight Hunt. And then Painful Lesson, basically the same card but from Amonkhet. Target player draws 2, loses 2. This one's a sorcery, however, but the flavor text is great. You wish to remember this lesson? I will write it down for you. Quote, Senefet, Vizier of Bontu. And lastly, Foreboding Fruit. 3 mana. Target player draws 2, loses 2. However, if you adamant it, if you pay 3 black mana, which will be very easy in a mono-black deck, you also create some food to get back the life that you just lost. And then some. And the final group of cards are the ones that will really make you the villain of the table. These are group discard cards. Weaken your opponents by denying them the resources they need. And as they have to discard stuff, we saw that we have ways to get back stuff from the graveyard. So this is quite a vicious strategy. Now I've got this in 2 ways. The creature way and the non-creature way. I'll show you both and you can decide which of these 2 ways you want. So it's 6 creatures or 6 instants and sorceries. Creatures first. Burglar Rat, 2 mana. When this enters, each opponent discards a card. So this is basically a suite of 2 mana creatures that have the exact same text. You can do it with a rat, you can do it with a human advisor, an elf cleric, an insect, or a rat rogue. And all of these are basically exactly the same card. 2 mana, you get a creature, they're all 1/1s, and when they enter, they make the opponent discard. They make all opponents discard 1 card. You also get a blocker for yourself. Lastly, I've got the Miasmic Mummy, which is also 2 mana, but it's a 2/2, but it also makes you discard a card. And again, for your type of deck, that's not a big deal. So 6 of these creature discard spells, which will make the opponents loathe your deck. Now, if you don't want to go off theme, I've got another way to do this because, okay, my deck's all about zombies, not rats and humans and elves. If you really want to stay on theme, I've got another way to do this. With instants and sorceries. So 6 that do the same thing, in a way. Vicious Rumors, 1 black mana, deals 1 damage to all your opponents, makes all of them discard 1 card, and mills all of them for 1, and you gain 1 life. I just love this card. This is also on my top 5 black cards. It's just so vicious for 1 black mana, and it's a common. I love it. And that art is amazing too. Moving up to Arterial Flow, only ever printed in Rivals of Ixalan, so get it before it gets too expensive. 3 mana, sorcery, each opponent discards 2 cards. And if you control vampires, which we don't, so don't even read that part. But 3 mana for all opponents to discard 2 cards, amazing. And that is some of the most vicious art I've ever seen. Unnerve, 4 mana, each opponent discards 2 cards. See, that's way too powerful that they don't really print cards that efficiently, so that's why you've got to snap them up whenever they pop up, because nowadays you've got 4 mana to do the same thing, but it's the same thing. All your opponents discard 2 cards, filling up their little graveyards for your shenanigans, and weakening their hand. If you've put mana rocks out, you can do this on turn 3, not even having to wait until turn 4, and doing that early in the game can be quite devastating. Liliana's Triumph, now this one's interesting. It's a mini board wipe in that all opponents will Sacrifice one creature, but if you got Liliana herself out, they also discard a card. And it's instant, and it's 2 mana. This might be a contender to be your signature spell also, because it's an efficient spell you can cast over and over. You get your 3 mana Liliana out, and you're ready to cast your signature spell, rather than waiting for a bunch of mana to eventually do a Dread Summons. So think about that. Next up, Delirium Skeins, 3 mana, each player discards 3 cards. Again, this will count yourself, so consider that if you really want it in this deck, but if you played and build it just right, there's no problem at all. Or how about a bad deal that is actually a great deal for you? You draw 2 cards, each opponent discards 2 cards, and each player loses 2 life. Get your opponents closer to death, get yourself closer to victory, and it just costs you 6 mana. Not a bad deal. And lastly, just swamps. 24 swamps. If you want to get fancy and put utility lands, go ahead. Lands that do more than just tap for mana, there's plenty of them out there. I'll leave that to you. But I'm going to keep this simple. I'm just going to pick some cool looking art, put 24 of them into my deck, and I'm done. So keep it simple maybe, and you'll do pretty well. But that's a pretty cute scorpion. And again, a shout out to all the patrons that saw this a week early. You can go over to patreon.com/vmcampos and pledge for the astounding price of $3.33 to get access to all my material a week early. There's also other exclusive stuff there, but if you want to support the channel, $3.33 a month isn't such a bad deal, I would say. Plus you get that exclusivity. Early content is good content. And there you go, that's my Liliana the Last Hope Oathbreaker deck with her Dread Summons as the signature spell. Do you agree that this is one of the most vicious Oathbreaker decks out there? Are you frothing at the mouth to try it out yourself and become the villain of the playgroup? Tell me about it in the comments. How would you improve the deck? There's always room for improvement. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Tell me in the comments. But if you've got $3 laying around, consider becoming part of the VMC crew and joining the Patreon. This has been VM Campos, and I'll see you in the next video.